Good morning and welcome to Seniors for Change, a series of discussions on health and positive aging. These sessions will continue every Thursday for the next 4 weeks. They will be at 11 a.m. and they will feature a different retired health care professional educator who will lead each session. So that will be 6 sessions total. The programs are brought to you in partnership with the Hamilton Council on Aging and the GERAS Centre. That stands for the Geriatric Education and Research in Aging Sciences, which is affiliated with McMaster University. Hamilton Council on Aging is also supported by funding from the United Way. My name is Chris, and I'm a librarian with the Hamilton Public Library. I'll mostly be in the background for today's session, just moderating and relaying questions. Today's session will be about nutrition. A few reminders before we begin. The session is recorded, so that may be posted on YouTube or other channels later. And just a reminder to mute your background, your microphone when you're not speaking, just to reduce background noises. Without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce Ann Pizzacalla, who is a member of the board of the Hamilton Council on Aging. Ann is a retired nurse practitioner with a specialization in the care of older adults. Thank you for being here today, Ann.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this partnership with the Hamilton Public Library, Chris.
You're welcome. We are very happy to have you.
Great. So good morning, everyone. So today we're going to talk about some nutritional tips and advice that we commonly provide for older adults. It's a way to optimize the way it's one of the important strategies for optimizing the way in which we age. The materials for all of these modules on positive aging were developed by people with deep expertise in the field, including many of our local clinicians whom you see listed here. We've also pulled advice and research results from McMaster Optimal Aging Portal, which is something that we recommend all of you to go to. We are also a partner of the Hamilton Health Sciences as well as McMaster University. So we're going to talk a little bit about how age affects, some age changes affect our eating and the quality of nutrition. We'll talk about the importance of that quality of nutrition for our general well-being. We'll have a focus on heart-healthy eating. We'll look at the way that cooking affects us, especially when in older age, when we tend to be cooking for reduced numbers, like just ourselves and a partner. We'll look at the impact of socialization on food. We'll talk a little bit about community resources, and you may have some ideas for us. The community resources are changing as we speak during this pandemic, so you may have some good ideas or tips and tricks that you've tried. Unfortunately, we won't be allowing you to sample recipes. We hope in the near future that we'll be meeting again in person and can resume that activity. I'm going to stop once partway through for questions and answers, and again at the end of the talk. Think of this talk as a tasting menu. It's not comprehensive. Information can change as new research comes out. So eating well improves the quality of life, certainly at any age, and we often underpower the difference that food can make in our lives, in our total well-being. It's very important for managing many chronic diseases, whether it's arteriosclerosis, which is that hardening of the arteries, or diabetes, or osteoporosis, or obesity. It's also very important for preventing those conditions as well. Some of the changes that we experience as we age. Well, the amount of our weight might stay stable, but the amount of that weight that we could measure in muscle mass changes. So we do begin to lose muscle mass, and we do begin to lose size of the muscles as we get older. We need to work to maintain that. Two other things are important. One is exercise, of course, we understand that, but the other is the quality of our diet, and in particular, the amount of protein that we take in and the quality of that protein. And we'll talk in more detail about that. Our digestion slows in two important ways. One, our bowel may become slower, and two, the amount of gut acidity that we have that helps us break down food and absorb it, that changes, and that has implications for some important vitamins, and as well as how we absorb protein. And again, more on that to come. Appetite can change. It can either go up or down. Income for many retired seniors, and smaller income can affect either what we can actually afford or what we perceive we can afford. And our social circles can change. A retired colleague of mine, actually one of my former nursing professors, used to say that she worked hard when she retired to maintain and enhance her social circle, to make sure that it stayed broad and varied. This is the negative nutrition cycle that can begin, and let's start with the green circle. Lower hydration is common for older adults. We have a decreased thirst mechanism, which leads us to naturally take in slightly lower volumes. And typically, we're encouraged to drink about 6 to 8 glasses of fluid daily. That fluid can also consist of tea and coffee. We used to think that dehydrated us, but that's not so. The caffeine does act as a bit of a diuretic, but the volume of fluid more than compensates for that. Fruits and vegetables that we're always being encouraged to eat also add to our hydration. For example, if you eat a nice healthy peach, you're drinking half a cup of fluid with that. So that's about 4 ounces of water in there, more if it's a bigger peach. We can decrease the amount of protein for a number of reasons as well. And once we need fewer calories to maintain our body weight because our metabolism is slowed. And if we don't stick to highly healthy foods, then we'll actually end up taking in fewer vitamins and minerals with that reduced intake. All of that can contribute either to weight loss or to muscle, most importantly, to muscle loss. So it's very important we attend to those things so we slow down or decrease or stall that loss of muscle. This in turn can lead to less energy and a weakened immune system. I'm frequently asked these days, what should I eat to improve my immune system? Is there a pill or a particular food? There is not. We need to be eating a very high quality diet to support our immune system. It's dependent on a very wide variety of healthy carbohydrates, fats, protein, and all the vitamins and minerals that go with that. That is the best way. Once our muscle mass decreases and our energy is lower, we tend to get into this cycle of reduced activity, which further accelerates things, and then we're into reduced appetite, drinking less, and so on. So we're going to work consciously to try to interrupt that and not let that cycle sit in. Okay, eating heart healthy. Most of you will have seen this. This is taken from the Dietitians of Canada. They have an excellent website. Highly recommend you go there for all kinds of information, including some specific information around diet in older adults. So choosing unsaturated versus saturated fats. We know that the omega-3s and 6s are considered critical for our whole well-being, our skin, our hair, our nervous system. Eating whole grains and fiber, and we'll address all of this in more detail. Those minimum 5 vegetables and fruits. We'll talk about a few strategies to get those. We'll talk specifically sodium intake. There is lots of controversy around that. We'll talk specifically about amounts and staying physically active. That's a better cycle. That's a great cycle for us to be into. Okay, let's start with salt. So theoretically, less salt is better. And what they've identified is that much of our excess salt intake comes from prepared foods. If we are salting our food for cooking and maybe a little bit of table salt, that's not the big evil. The source of too much salt is usually in our breads and cereals and a lot of our snack food. So what's recommended right now? A maximum of 3/4 teaspoon a day to half. It's shocking to think that for many of us, we get 3 to 5 teaspoons a day. Spices make a great substitute. So adding lemon rather than salt can really perk up any vegetables. Limiting the amount of cheese that you're eating or looking for a lower sodium variety. Of limiting, again, the amounts of salted preserved foods that you take in, such as sausage and bacon, which are kind of on the don't go there list right now. And remember that if you do have some chronic diseases, you may have a very specific target around your salt. So people with certain heart conditions and certain kidney issues need to go by the advice of their healthcare team and not anything that's written elsewhere. So cholesterol is something else that we hear a great deal about. We hear a lot about it because it's hardening of the what we used to call hardening of the arteries, which is not a bad description. It's such a common condition, especially as we get older. And we know that high levels of cholesterol in the blood do correlate with this condition. We need some cholesterol. We need it to make our hormones. It's part of metabolizing vitamin D, and it's found in the food we eat. Cholesterol only comes from animal sources. So if you're eating cholesterol, it's from animal foods. Too much cholesterol, we need some, but too much cholesterol really increases our risk of heart attack and stroke, something we're all trying to avoid. You can see an example here of plaque building up and narrowing that artery, and that results in poor blood flow, and it can result in poor blood flow not just to the heart and the brain, but also to anywhere else in the body and to the peripheries or to our internal organs. Fats. Big issues around fats these days, but here's our current advice. Eat fat, eat unsaturated fat in smaller amounts. These are what we call monounsaturated and monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. These fats are liquid at room temperature. They are from plant sources, and they lower our what we call the good cholesterol, our low density lipoprotein. Good cholesterol helps clear what we call the bad cholesterol from our system. Examples of the healthy fats include olive oil and canola oil and corn oil and sunflower oil. Lots of controversy around coconut oil, which is viewed often in the literature as being healthy. And our answer to that is that's not what the research is saying at this time. Coconut oil, when you look at it at room temperature, is a solid substance. It's a highly, highly saturated fat, and we're not yet advising that there's something different about the kind of saturated fat that's there, that you should be using it. So it's on the list to avoid. Avocados have a mix of both saturated and unsaturated fat in them and are actually high in fat. The cardiac dietitians advise that if you do have heart disease, think about when you're adding in avocado, think about it as adding in a fat for the day. Nuts and seeds are good sources of healthy fats, and so are some of the soft margarines. Baicel is an example of a margarine that's considered on the healthier side. So we want healthier fats, and we want them in moderation. The omega-6s and 3s that we are hearing about come often, you can find them in flaxseed, a very good source, salmon, sardines, and they do have an impact on our cholesterol, increasing our good cholesterol and helping to lower the bad cholesterol. Okay, so those saturated fats, and we'll speak in a minute about trans fats, those saturated fats do raise your cholesterol level. So if you're somebody who's trying to manage that, in addition to taking medications, if your cholesterol is too high, you really need to attend to diet. It can make a big difference in reducing your risk for heart disease. And again, our saturated fats tend to come from animal products. Fatty meats, lard, remember when we used to use lard for cooking and baking? Chicken with skin, the higher fat milks and cheeses, the higher fat yogurts, coconut and palm kernel oils, which we find in many processed and prepared foods. Around trans fats, Canada has taken significant steps to reduce the amount of trans fat in our diet. And as of 2018, legislation was passed that banned the use of trans fats in processed foods. So we can no longer buy pies and cakes, etc., that are made with these. Manufacturers like them because they increase the shelf life and can add to that mouthfeel and taste that we like. Butter versus margarine, another controversy. We're advising heart-healthy margarine. It'll be advertised. Take a look at the contents of what's in your margarine before you buy it. It will tell you on the side whether or not how much of this fat is saturated and how much is unsaturated. Protein. So protein is key to maintaining muscle mass, and it is one of the substances that seniors are often a little bit low in. It's also very satisfying. It breaks down a little more slowly, and it helps us feel nice and full. With the amount that we're recommending that you get each day is 1 milligram of protein for every kilogram of weight. So, for example, if you weigh 60 kilos, you want to be taking in 60 milligrams of protein daily. And I'll give you an example of what my breakfast food, my typical breakfast food would like, and the amount of protein in there. So I eat oatmeal most mornings, and a bowl of about a cup of oatmeal will give me 5 to 6 milligrams of protein. I put on half a cup of skim milk. That gives me another 4 milligrams. And then I add hemp seed. Hemp seed is very high in healthy fats, and it's also high in protein. I have put in 3 tablespoons, and that gives me a whopping 10 milligrams of protein. So the total takes me to 18 grams, which gets me almost a third of the way of where I need to be in a day. So and it's also a good idea to have some protein at each meal. It will keep you more satisfied. You will run better on it. In addition to our typical meats and eggs and cheeses that we're used to thinking about as sources of protein, we're now very much encouraging people to think about beans and a few nuts through the day as a source. So beans, lentils, dried peas, etc., really do enhance not only our protein intake, but our fiber intake. From a cup and a half of a lentil soup, and those red lentils cook up quickly, I would get about 15 grams of protein. And in addition, I would get another 13 or 14 grams of fiber. We'll talk about that in a minute. Calcium and bone health. So calcium, the recommendation now, unless you are advised otherwise by your doctor, is that you get your calcium from your food. So dairy products, and for an example, one glass of milk a day would give me close to 300 milligrams of calcium. And that would get me a quarter of the way of where I want to be for my 1200 milligram intake. Yogurts, and in particular the concentrated yogurts like the Greek yogurts and the Icelandic yogurts are also very good sources. as are some of the harder cheeses. But we can also get calcium from things like sardines and salmon, fortified orange juice, almonds, tofu, interestingly. They use a product called calcium citrate to act as a setting agent for tofu, and it's also a very high source of calcium for you. This is key for bone health, but calcium is involved in the function of our nervous system, etc. as well. In order to absorb that calcium, we have to be taking in some vitamin D. We can get vitamin D not just from foods, but also from the sun. Now, the challenge with getting it from the sun is that we live in a northern climate. So we can use the sun from April to September, our winter months. We just don't have enough sun intensity to get us the vitamin D that we need. Fortunately, we are able to store some. Vitamin D is needed to help absorb the calcium from the gut. So if you're low in vitamin D, you're going to be low in absorbing calcium. Many people, it's recommended for older adults to take vitamin D, 800 international units daily. You may be advised by your doctor if you have osteoporosis. You may have different guidelines around how much calcium you're to take in and how much vitamin D. And again, that's who you want to listen to. So back to fiber. So how much fiber do I need? Toilet talk, okay. So we can avoid most of this through 1, fluid, and 2, fibers. How much fiber should you be taking in daily? Well, you want to take in 25 milligrams if you're a woman, oops, and 30 milligrams if you're a man. Remember that cup and a half of lentil soup that I just ate gave me almost 14 or 15 grams of fiber. And the breakfast cereal that I had gave me 6 or 8. So I'm almost there with those 2 meals. Fluids, again, think about that 6 to 8 cups of fluid daily. If problems persist, you talk to your doctor about the idea of reviewing your medication. Activity also makes a big difference for our gut health and will can help to deal with that issue. Now, I'm just going to stop here now in order to take any questions. So
All right. Okay, yeah,
okay,
we have some questions. First question, how many eggs per week is considered healthy?
Well, there's been a fair bit of research on that because egg yolks are high in cholesterol. And there was one study that had shown that it wasn't high in egg intake level for diabetics is not good. But that doesn't mean they have to eliminate completely. And the limit that's advised is about 3 eggs per week, eaten separately, not all at once. And otherwise, enjoying an egg a day is considered a good healthy source of food.
Thanks. Okay, another question relating to protein. I guess 2 questions. So salmon's kind of been featured in your presentation so far as probably a really good thing to eat because of the vitamin D and protein. Is there concerns with mercury from fish like that?
I would look at where the source. So that's a good question around the mercury. So pregnant women in particular are advised to limit the amount of fish that they take in and also to look up any guidelines, and this will vary from place to place and source to source, around how much mercury is in any particular kind of fish. Sometimes it's dependent on the area where they're caught from. In a particular, some of the freshwater fish in Lake Ontario, it might not be good to consume very much of that during that time. But our food is tested and regulated, so. And I would have to look up exact amounts.
Okay. All right. And one last question for you. Is there a threshold where it'd be considered too much protein, or is that something that people can safely kind of try to load up on?
The threshold for how much protein you should eat each day, I mean, I've given you the 1 milligram, and that's for an average older adult. And again, if you have kidney disease, it's not good to load up an extra protein, and you would have other specific guidelines. If you're an athlete, 1 milligram who's competing at very high levels, 1 milligram per kilo per day would not be adequate. The paleo diets that are being recommended now are considered over longer term harder on the body. It's a lot of processing to do for both your liver and your kidneys, and aren't advised as a highly healthy diet.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, good. Yeah. So it's not just the individual choices that we make around what we eat once we're home. It's also the kind of food that we're surrounded by that really influences what we pick. So shopping's an excellent example of this. I tend to eat what I see. I'm someone who has a large appetite, gets great pleasure from food. I'm tempted by most things. When I go grocery shopping, I deliberately do this pattern. I start my shopping and do the periphery of the store. I hit the fruit and vegetables first and fill up my cart. Right now, I'm not eating any meat or seafood. So you would find me in the bean aisle, which is more in the middle. But and then look at dairy and eggs. The expensive aisles are in the middle, and the processed food tends to be positioned in the middle of the grocery store to give it high visibility. And we're advising that you shop in a pattern that helps you avoid that. When we think about what we eat, again, it's just not what we prepare for ourselves in the home, but what we do bring home and what's in our environment. So focus on those fresh foods and keep them visible in your fridge so that that's what you're eating for. We eat what we see. Okay, cooking for one or two. Now, another question I get from friends these days, especially as we've been home in the pandemic and are eating out a whole lot less and weren't going out to visit friends for meals or just even meeting for casual lunches, is I don't know what to cook anymore. And actually many, usually women who have been cooking all their lives, reach a point that they describe as just cooking fatigue. They can't think of what to cook anymore. They're tired of cooking, etc. So to manage these kind of emotional response to the preparing of food, we recommend one that you work on your exercise a bit. It will help. It will really help with appetite. And going for a walk before meals rather than just after can really help you relax a bit so you feel ready to face the chore. Staying hydrated will also help with that feeling of fatigue, and that's something to pay particular attention to these days. How much water we actually need is profoundly influenced not by just how much we take in, how many fruits and vegetables we're eating, but also how much we're sweating. Make the meal a comfortable place to be. You can set a table. It will help you relax when you do sit down to eat. It will also help you focus on the food and pay attention. And adding some herbs and spices for flavor. Crock pots have been a godsend for many, I'm told, and really help with the ease of preparing food and also of preparing those beans. Several of my friends during the pandemic are also doing using the following kinds of strategies. They're calling up friends, they set a menu, they get together either by Zoom or even over the phone. Everybody cooks the meal together, and then they sit down and eat it and comment on whether or not they like that dish and how things were. And I'm seeing this done not just across younger groups, but older groups as well. What has stimulated me most is talking to other women about foods to try and individuals who bring new recipes to try and new dishes when we have been able to get together. And it's one of the strategies we used to use when we used to meet to deliver in person these kinds of education sessions. we would bring in foods for people to try that were healthy and that we had prepared. It stimulated lots of interest and discussion. Cooking is very social. So it's not just what we choose. It's not just our environment. It's also the people that we eat with. So you're aiming for the 3 food groups in your food. Meals don't have to be fancy. If the fatigue continues, and I'm talking about the preparation fatigue, think about that grocer's hot food bar where you can buy things. You can buy the fruit already cut up and the vegetables already prepared. You can buy great grilled vegetables. You can buy that cabbage salad already sliced and diced. If you really don't feel you can face making a meal, think about reaching for things like yogurt and fruit or milk. Make your small snacks and make them nutritious. And again, there's that strategy of eating with others. If low appetite or your taste changes, then it's really a good thing to talk about with your family physician. It can be med related. Food safety, so leftovers, eating up the leftovers. You want to put leftovers in your fridge pretty quickly after a meal, and you want to use them within a couple of days or freeze them. This can also help with food fatigue. If you are cooking, cook enough for 2 meals. Freezer life is considered within 2 to 3 months. My husband is very good at digging through our freezer and getting rid of things that shouldn't be in there. Thawing, we're always advised to thaw in the fridge and not on the countertop. And to eat those thawed items pretty quickly. And you want to reheat them at least to 165 degrees. They're also recommended that you only reheat things once. So you take out a frozen dish, you've reheated it. If there's still leftovers after that, think about discarding. I know we're all trying to be more conscious about food waste, but also we want you to stay safe. And soups that have been frozen and then thawed, soups and gravies and sauces should be brought to a boiling point before serving. For individuals who are suffering nutritional issues, supplements can be a real godsend. They aren't really, we don't recommend them as a meal replacement, but we do recommend them as a fortifier and as a substitute, for those who really cannot eat. They can also help a lot. For example, if you're recovering from an illness or perhaps some surgery and don't have the energy to prepare, these can help you get going. These are, we have pictures of Ensure and Boost. They're both examples of commonly recommended supplements. Get a recommendation from your family doctor or your nutritionist or your pharmacist around what might be good for you. They can particularly help with that low nutritional state that can come with when someone's protein levels are low. Okay, and taking out meals, don't be afraid again to use that bar. If you're not able to cook, you can change up your foods. You can have a breakfast for dinner. Again, it's making sure that what you're choosing is nutritious. So snacks, here's some examples of some healthy snacks. We can do smoothies. If you've got grandchildren around and they're into smoothies, ask them to share with you and make for you. Fruit and yogurt are a good choice. Peanut butter and fruit, hummus and vegetables, all of that can be bought already prepared. And cereal with milk. Try some new ideas. Try to change things up to keep your interest going. Here's some more examples for us. It also includes some protein. So some signs of poor nutrition. Assess yourself. So are you experiencing a decrease in appetite? Are you having problems with your teeth? That will profoundly affect what you eat. Is your weight changing? Is it going up or down? Are you struggling with grocery shopping? Have you suddenly fractured your leg and can't go shopping anymore? That will profoundly affect what's in your house. We need to problem solve around that. Is your ability to cook changed in some way? Perhaps you've had severe vision changes and no longer feel safe around the stove. Or perhaps you've got an arm fracture. Perhaps your arthritis is kicking up and affecting your ability to use your hands. Food security, so money, is that affecting what you're choosing? A good strategy would be to talk to your family doctor and ask if there's a social worker attached with this practice who could help you look at this issue. Has your social circle suddenly changed? Have you lost your closest friends that you used to? Have you moved and no longer have the same contact? Are you isolated by the pandemic? And that may have profoundly affected your intake. So tooth pain, we do want you to address any pain issue. Oops, excuse me. We do want you to address any tooth issues and do that fairly quickly. Right now, our dentists are open, especially for urgent issues. If money is an issue as well, the city has a service that can be used in urgent issues. Swallowing problems are not normal, so that's not a normal change of aging, and we should attend to that. If we're gaining weight, again, think about what could be going on and think about talking with family practice about that. We can still do phone consults with our doctors. Cognitive impairment. Now, nutrition takes a huge hit when we start to get changes with memory. Without realizing it, we will stop cooking to the same degree, and our intake falls, and weight loss is often one of the early signs of cognitive impairment. The number of medications that we're on. So don't hesitate to consult with your pharmacist or your GP if you're having a nutritional changes, and have them look to see if anything's affecting appetite there. So eating with friends or loved ones, food is so embedded socially for us and culturally. And it's part of our celebrations, it's part of the way we feel connected when we're planning a party. A big focus is always on the food. What will she present? What would be enticing? What foods are very important culturally and must be present? Our parties and our get-togethers really help us reflect on our culture. There's a tremendous pleasure in sharing good food. And we do take in more when we're eating with others. For some of us, that's something I try to avoid. So I have to use other kinds of strategies when I'm eating with other people so I don't overeat. Okay, so some resources that are very good. The Dietitians of Canada has just a great website. It's full of not just facts and information, but also recipes. And it has a specific area around seniors and eating well as an older adult. Eat Right Ontario, there's a free Dial a Dietitian service. There's something called the Nutri e-screen. You could it gives you information around diet, but it also, you can go in and self-assess and see how you score on a Nutri e-screen. Agri-Foods for Healthy Aging is another good website. And then the North Hamilton Community Center Diabetes Program, they're still offering clinical services over the phone and can do consultation that way. Or your family doctor may have a diabetic nurse attached or access to one, and they can do consultation over the phone if diabetes is an issue. And again, don't be afraid to ask your family doctor if you need to consult with a registered dietitian. So those are our highlights for today. Our tasting menu on some highlights of looking after yourself nutritionally as you get older. Okay, any more questions out there?
Okay, one question so far, Anne. Do you have any general recommendations regarding deli meat? Is that something that people should try to work in or avoid?
Deli meats, yes. So the concern around deli meats is that many processed foods are full of what we call nitrates, and nitrates are considered not good for you. So they're not banned, but what they're saying is there seems to be a signal coming from the nutritional research that the more of those you eat, the more at risk you are of a number of diseases. So what they're currently saying is they use the adjective avoid. Avoid them. Eat in limited amounts. Don't eat bacon and sausage every day. See if you can find another alternative besides mortadella for your sandwich. Maybe mortadella is very important to you culturally. It is to my husband, so he doesn't buy it regularly, but especially in the summer, 3 or 4 times in the summer, he has his mortadella sandwich.
That's definitely understandable. Thank you. I'll give it another second. Looks like that's all the questions for now. We'll see if anyone sends one through in chat. While we're just waiting for a second, I'd just like to thank you. That was a very informative and excellent session, and I'm sure inspiring even. And I think this information will be very helpful for people. So we really appreciate you doing this talk.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for this opportunity.
Our pleasure. I think that'll be all for questions for today.
Okay. Great.
Excellent. So we will be returning next Thursday at the same time. And do you recall offhand what the topic is?
Yes, we'll be talking about cognitive health, maintaining cognitive health as we age. Okay,
so that should be another interesting session. And please do register for that if you would like to join, and we will send out the link for that as well. Thank you everyone for your time today, and again, we really appreciate this.
Great, good. And if anyone else would like to stay on the line, I'll just chat a little longer to some of my colleagues out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.